5 years in a row, victory at Ewood Park, and it tastes very sweet. We've got Dan and Jordan to review that game with us, but we're also asking the question this week, was Fleming's celebration in grabbing that flag, did they go too far? Plus, we're also talking about the FA Cup preview, could Burnley fans care less, and who are the top 3 players that should be signing for the Clarets this January. Now the January transfer window is open. Happy New Year to you, Dan. Jordan, there's only one place we're starting this week, which is, of course, that game at Ewood Park. Dan, how did you see it?
It was exactly as we called it, to be perfectly frank. It wasn't a classic. It was a bit boring at times. It was a bit kind of no one wanted to lose. We said they wouldn't score. They didn't. And then one bit of quality by, the better team, the bigger team, kind of thing, just sent the 4,000 into raptures. Now, I know some of our friends from down the road do watch some of what we've done, so I brought a friend just so they can get their thrill. But yeah, it was what it was. It was a nervy game. It was an edgy game. There was passages of time where they controlled the play. There's passages of time when we did. There was not a lot. I think the managers always say there's a lot of huff and puff, but then not an awful lot of end product. But then that one bit of quality when Humphries delivers the ball in, Fleming dives into it, and it would prove to be the difference. And I know they had a couple of chances. They had a header that flashed wide, and then they had a bit of pinball. But aside from that, they had limited what they could do. So, yeah. It was inevitable. It's not even fun anymore. It's
Oh, it is. I'm sure it is. Jordan, do you think the referee managed the game well? There's obviously some Rovers fans are saying, look, the Burnley should have had a couple more yellows and possibly a red.
I've seen this absolutely everywhere, and I don't even know how they have the cheek. He was horrendous, was the referee. Sarmiento fouled in the first 2-3 minutes. Achilles heel straight down it. Zaruri were getting done for that against City last season. So that needed to be sorted. Okay, we're lucky to get off with one with Laurent. Laurent maybe we're lucky to still be on the pitch being on a yellow, but all they wanted to do was foul. There's nothing else they could have done. Todd Cantwell spent 90% of the time on his... all I heard was, Todd Cantwell's going to run this game. The only thing he were running with lawnmower to try and check how long grass were. He just spent his life on the floor. No, I think it were abysmal, the referee. I've had this on Twitter a few times. I went on a bit of a rant after the Stoke game. I do not like the officials in this league.
Okay. We've got to give a shout out to Egan Riley. I know he got man of the match, Dan, but everything that came in that box, it was either his head on it or a Stev's head on it. My goodness, what a powerhouse unit of centre backs you've got there.
Yeah, I thought they were both fantastic. I thought the whole back line were pretty solid as well. Obviously, Humphries, I think he got the Sky man of the match. But CJ Egan Riley, his reading of the game was fantastic. Interceptions, positioning, anything that they threw in, we were the first head on it, again with a Stev. But even when they got into promising positions, we cut out the amount of times he cut out a ball from promising positions was just fantastic. I think he was very, very good. And like I said, the back four, including Trafford, back five, I thought played a brilliant game and did what they needed to do. And if ever they looked dangerous, it was snuffed out pretty quick, or they threw the bodies in the way and did what they needed to do. And I thought Egan Riley, especially as well in the first half, he were pinging balls across to Anthony, and he were landing on a sixpence. It was phenomenal, and I hope that we managed to, keep hold of him certainly for the rest of this year and see if we can sign him going forward. But just to go back to what Jordan was saying about the ref, I thought, if the Rovers players wanted a shirt that bad, they initially got club shot. Tried to second off all our players' backs. Unbelievable. They can have this one if it's out of date, but they can still have it.
They physically did with Cullen, didn't they? They took it off Cullen.
They did, yeah. It's amazing how that came off here. All right, then. Let's talk about the celebrations then at the end, because this has raised a few questions, not just from Blackburn fans, but from other football fans as well. It's created a bit of a divide. So there you go. Fleming's there, grabs the corner flag, puts the Burnley flag over the Rovers flag, and then waves it in a manner which many are calling Jordan inflammatory, and could have been dangerous. First of all, you have a problem with what he did as a Burnley fan? Can you see why people might have an issue with it? And if Cantwell did it at Turf Moor, would you be all right with it?
Right, well, they call it inflammatory, and I just call it clutching at straws. They've got nothing else to cry about, so let's cry about that. If Todd Cantwell came and did it at the Turf, I'd be fuming because that's our turf. But I wouldn't be. Oh, it needs banning. No, I'm not that. I'm not that sort of childish person. But a lot of them are. I've seen the Twitter posts, so I can understand. The two brain cells go off every now and again, and they seem to think that that should be a banning. No, it's not. What it is you've got a team who are proud that they've done the 4,000 travelling fans extremely proud. Why can't we just say raw emotions took over? In anything else that's acceptable, but in football it's let's give them a ban. No, let's not give them a ban. Let's just see what that meant to us. It's just clutching at straws. They're looking for something because they have nothing else to cry about, really.
What about the safety aspect of it, Dan? Do you think that perhaps it could have incited a riot?
If that's going to incite a riot, they need something better in their lives to worry about. I mean, I get it. By the time he's waving that flag in any event, the game's finished. Most of them are back home. The stadium was pretty much empty, except for our fans. Now, I do get it. I do get where they're coming from. Picking up the flag, putting the Burnley shirt over it, waving it around and what have you. Yeah, it's. I suppose as a home fan, you'd be blazing. But if that's what's going to spark a riot, some guy putting a shirt on a flag, then you need better things to worry about in your life. The only thing I will agree with, and I kind of do get it to an extent. I think it was Chris Sutton who was in the studio on Sky, and he was there through gritted teeth. He was basically saying it seemed a bit over the top. You've not won anything. You're halfway through the season. It's like you're almost celebrating the league. Now, I don't agree with him. Like I agree with Jordan, it was raw emotion. It was a hard-fought victory over your closest rivals, where everyone was thinking that we're there for the taking, and we beat them. But to an extent, was it a bit over the top? Not too much for the safety aspect, but in as far as celebrations go, probably, possibly. But we'll forgive him. And like you say, if it was the other way around, we'd be going bananas. But as far as the safety, people need to get a grip. He's just waving a flag.
Okay. There's some Blackburn fans saying it was the Haaland stay humble moment and saying, "Watch what happens now after that. We shall see
14 points time or whatever it takes them."
Before we move on from the Christmas period games, I just want to we review every game, of course, on this channel. If you haven't yet subscribed, of course, please do so. We last spoke to you, of course, a couple of weeks ago before the Boxing Day fixture. Great result against Sheffield United. They weren't very happy about some decisions in that game. Referee didn't spot a foul on O'Hare. They were saying you got away with that one. A strange draw at Middlesbrough, and then an equally much more strange draw against an out of form Stoke City side. What went wrong in those two draws for you, Jordan?
Personally, I think you can't undermine how good Middlesbrough are, and I think you've got to be mindful of the threat that they can bring. I mean, just look at Latte Laugh. That boy can make something out of nothing. So I think that were more mindfulness more than anything, and I don't like handing out excuses. I mean, I've been known to come on here and go, I used to play football all the time, day in, day out. But they did look extremely leggy in the Stoke game, so it did make more sense. A lot of changes were made. But I don't think we can just, look at them two games and go, oh, well, no, let's look at what's around it. You've got Sheffield in there, we beat them. Do you know what I mean? We shouldn't have gone there and beat the Blades. No one has done this season. So I just think let's take them as write-offs. There wasn't one loss in them. And we've come out with much more points at the beginning of the run that I think anybody expected.
Dan, any qualms with what Hannibal did in the Stoke game? That's two red cards, isn't it, for that?
Bloody stupid, wasn't it? When I was on and I saw it live, I didn't see what he'd done. And people around me said, I've seen the replay, it's not that bad. He runs over the guy, there's no need for it. He could hurdle him, he could go around him. There's no need to do it. He's obviously upset or frustrated, one or the other, and then he's done something daft. It's a red card all day. He's got no qualms with it. I do agree. I thought the ref was a bit unusual on that. I think the guy he stamped on technically shouldn't have been on the park. He should have been booked second time for holding someone back, but that's by the by. But Hannibal, what he did, he'll know. Everyone's seen it. He'll know he's stupid. Parker mentioned it. you can't have any qualms with it. And that's my opinion. Others will say, "Oh, he barely touched him," but no, I think you can't run over a chap who's on the floor, regardless of what he's done.
Okay.
Well, the funny thing would be as well, I'd just really quickly like to mention with Hannibal, he's on this stump, he's never had a red before. That's his first ever red. Now, I'm happy.
Really?
Swear to God, I was stunned and all. I'm happy it's happened only because on the front of, I'm gutted it was before the Blackburn game, but that's now been and gone and we won that. But looking back now with hindsight, what a beautiful thing. Will that rein him in a bit now? Because he got a yellow card every single game. So I'm hoping that just I love the pardon for swearing, the shit out of his side. But and maybe that will just rein that back in a bit more like a Barnes. He knows how to do it. He can frustrate him without going over the top and getting himself booked. So maybe it might have been a good thing.
Okay. We did call it, didn't we, that Hannibal may get a red card in the Blackburn game. But yeah, actually, beat us to it. Let's look forward now then. Yeah. Let's look forward now then, shall we? And look ahead to what's coming next. And it's FA Cup weekend. And it's a trip to Reading away for Burnley. Can I ask you this, both of you? This is the form from Burnley in the FA Cup of recent years. Now, quarterfinals against City, we all know how that ended a couple of seasons ago. But other than running into Man City a lot, why haven't Burnley done better in the FA Cup in recent years, Dan?
I think, sadly, it's one of those. We've always kind of used it to, put squad players out. It's always been too focused on other things. Certainly in the last 10 years, you look at, we're either scrapping for survival in the Premier League or we are trying to get back into the Premier League. So it's never been a priority because you always know it when you get to the latter stages of it, you're going to meet a City, an Arsenal, a Liverpool, not necessarily Man United, but whoever. And as such, I think it's a case of we'll see how far we can get with our squad players, and if we get a win, great. If we don't, we've had a good run out with it. So I think that's possibly, I can't say that's for certain, but certainly that's how it feels to the fans, in that the second keeper always gets a goal, the fringe players get a run out of it. So, and then with Company, we had a run on it. I think we had a run on it under Deitch as well until we got beat by Lincoln. Yeah, I think that's possibly the reason why. It's just we've got the prize money for staying in the Premier League or getting to it is offset by having a good cup run. It's not worth getting your top players injured. It's not worth the burnout. We've just had a run of 5 or 6 games where we've got 11 from 15 points. They need a rest. He'll rest them. I think he will, and that's probably why the form's always been poor.
Okay, Jordan, could you care less then about this game at Reading? Would it be a good thing if Reading just knocked you out? Then you can focus on Sunderland, the Sunderland game in 2 weeks' time.
No, I'd like a run, but only if that run had consist of, like Dan just said, fringe players. If we can put the fringe players on and they can have a good game, then why not go on a run? But don't ever make it more excessive than that. Like Dan said, don't risk our top players. I'm not overly bothered about it. I won't get overly hyped like I do. I'm happy I'm watching Burnley like I buzz anytime I watch any game with us on it. But no, it's one of them. It's just a game to me. So if we got knocked out, I won't be gutted. Maybe if we're in semis or something, but that could have been good. But if it's just a starter, I'm not really bothered.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it falls under less than asked.
It's a shame. Many fans have had the same sentiment. Finally, then this week, January window is now open. So, we need some players. We need some players in. The question is, who should we target? Dan, any names you want to throw out there? If Scotty P's watching,
Scotty P. We've not mentioned his name today.
Scotty P.
Well, it sounds like he seemingly, if you believe the rumours, he's getting the band back together, isn't he? He's got Barnes back in. There's some suggestion Corner has been released on a free, and that's a position that we could do with filling. And then there's been a few other names, old players mentioned. I think Andre Gray has been released from Plymouth, and a few other people as well. That being said, I'm not sure, like we've said before, X's are X's for a reason. But I think if you're looking shopping in the lower leagues, you've got Louis Barry, but I think everyone's mentioned his name a million times. Probably every other person you've spoken to today has probably mentioned that name. And also Jay Stansfield from Birmingham. We're desperate need for a striker. He's banging him in. He's only 22. He's a young lad. And And we could also do with a winger as well, where you get them from. Or we could be doing with a decent physio, because if you look at our injury list, if we got all them back, we'd be in a much better place. I mean, you've got Benson, Redmond, Ramsey. I know I'm reading them because I wrote them down. You've got Tresor, who seems to be remarkably poorly at the minute. Bless him. Anyway, but so yeah, I think certainly we need a striker. Those are a couple of names that were banded around. I'm sure Jordan, with his much superior knowledge, probably has a few more.
Let's find out, Jordan.
I did. And then we started sharpening up the positions. So I said at first I'd have gone Van Ewing from Coventry for a right back. I love Connor, but there were links about him going back to Swansea. Maybe his time will coming short, so he'd have been a perfect replacement. Van Ewing, he's fast, he's tricky, he can move forward, and then we got Oliver Sonnin, so that's no longer needed. When I look in for a striker, I know, don't get me wrong, Louis Barry's a shout, but it's only League One he's impressing in, and as much as if he could come and be a project, and he is a fantastic player. I looked after Dan mentioned the last time, and he does look brilliant. I'd go for a more a championship-based player who I think could also cut it in the Prem. So I think we'd need to shop inwards. And my biggest thing, and I don't understand why it's never been a name that's been mentioned, is Carlton Morris from Luton. Luton are dire this season, and he's so much better than that team is. I remember when he came. They came to the turf and he scored the equaliser. He just is a player that doesn't give up. Big, strong up front. He can make something out of nothing. So he'd be a massive shout. I did have a few. Some of them that I put down were just majorly unrealistic, and maybe it's agent talk, but I don't see what would be the issue with dipping in for Harvey Barnes. I heard that Newcastle were after getting rid of him so they could free up space or even make money on the FFP. So his dad, ex-Burnley player, so could he be talked into it? Maybe. Kieran
He was
Trippier
born in Burnley, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. Kieran
Yeah.
Trippier is another name, but I think maybe he's past his cause and he's bigger than Burnley now. One that did severely interest me, and if I'm right in saying he was at Newcastle when they was in the Championship, and he'd be an absolute steal if we could get him, it'd be Miguel Almiron. Bit of a forgotten name now, but I don't see why he couldn't work within our take. He's so versatile. He's centre attacking mid, he's right wing. And every time I've seen that boy put on a Newcastle shirt, he's been fantastic. So there is a few names there, some of them unrealistic, but the big name for me would be, why aren't we going in for Carlton Morris? He fits Scott Parker's system so well.
It's a fair shout.
Good shots.
Who's that winger who used to play for West Ham, now playing in France, we've been linked with?
Oh, I did see his name. What was his name?
I can't remember, but that sounded like a bit of a fanciful tale as well. But anyway.
Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much, both of you. I'd say enjoy the FA Cup, but you're not going to care too much about it, are you? Sunderland up next, and they are now in the automatic promotion race, aren't they? Is it now 4 rather than 3 for you?
No, I think the wheels will fall off with Sunderland personally. I don't want them to. I do actually really like Sunderland. Ever since I watched that, what was it called now on Netflix? Sunderland Till I Die. I did get, don't support them, but you do get a soft spot for places, don't you? I've now got a soft spot for Wrexham. If they ever did a Blackburn one, I still wouldn't have a soft spot, but we move on. But yeah, no, Sunderland, the wheels will fall off. They don't have the depth, but it'd be nice.
All right, well, we're going to preview Burnley Sunderland next week. Join us for that one. Enjoy the game against Reading. Thank you very much, both of you. Enjoy your champagne that you've got on ice from this weekend's result. We'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining us.